President Trump spoke at the United Nations this morning. And it was carried by CNN, by MSNBC, by Fox, and by Newsmax. It is significant that it was carried by CNN and MSNBC because people are hearing things they otherwise would not hear. Donald Trump talked about not only his record since he's been in office for 8 months, what he's done. He also gave a dress down, I would even say beat down, to the world over their immigration policies, over buying Russian oil while opposing what Putin has done in invading Ukraine, that Donald Trump says you're supporting both sides of the war, funding both sides of the war. Donald Trump also talked about what he called scam of climate change. It was a tour de force. He looked confident. He looked happy. And by the way, the teleprompter broke down. He made a joke out of it. He said, I don't need a teleprompter. He did have a written speech in front of him that he read from. But you know, Trump, he often departed from the script and said some things. It was really quite remarkable performance. Here's what he said about the United Nations funding the assault on Western countries. And he also talked about their borders. Number 34.
Not only is the UN not solving the problems it should, too often, it's actually creating new problems for us to solve. The best example is the number one political issue of our time, the crisis of uncontrolled migration. It's uncontrolled. Your countries are being ruined. The United Nations is funding an assault on Western countries and their borders. In 2024, the UN budgeted $372 million in cash assistance to support an estimated 624,000 migrants journeying into the United States. Think of that. The UN is supporting people that are illegally coming into the United States, and then we have to get them out. The UN also provided food, shelter, transportation, and debit cards to illegal aliens. Can you believe that? On the way to infiltrate our southern border. Millions of people came through that southern border. Just a year ago, millions and millions of people were pouring in, 25 million altogether over the 4 years of the incompetent Biden administration. And now we have it stopped, totally stopped. In fact, they're not even coming anymore because they know they can't get through. But what took place is totally unacceptable. The UN is supposed to stop invasions, not create them and not finance them. In the United States, we reject the idea that mass numbers of people from foreign lands can be permitted to travel halfway around the world, trample our borders, violate our sovereignty, cause unmitigated crime, and deplete our social safety net.
He also talked about Europe should stop buying oil from Russia because they're funding the Ukraine war while fighting Russia. Number 36.
China and India are the primary funders of the ongoing war by continuing to purchase Russian oil. But inexcusably, even NATO countries have not cut off much Russian energy and Russian energy products, which, as you know, I found out about 2 weeks ago, and I wasn't happy. Think of it. They're funding the war against themselves. Who the hell ever heard of that one? In the event that Russia is not ready to make a deal to end the war, then the United States is fully prepared to impose a very strong round of powerful tariffs, which would stop the bloodshed, I believe, very quickly. But for those tariffs to be effective, European nations, all of you are gathered here right now, would have to join us in adopting the exact same measures. I mean, you're much closer to this. We have an ocean in between. You're right there. And Europe has to step it up. They can't be doing what they're doing. They're buying oil and gas from Russia while they're fighting Russia. It's embarrassing to them. And it was very embarrassing to them when I found out about it, I can tell you that. They have to immediately cease all energy purchases from Russia. Otherwise, we're all wasting a lot of time. So I'm ready to discuss this. We're going to discuss it today with the European nations, all gathered here. sure they're thrilled to hear me speak about it, but that's the way it is. I like to speak my mind and speak the truth.
Now, those of us backing Trump have heard this before, but I assure you there are lots of people in this country and around the world who've never heard this before. The damage done by unbridled immigration, the damage done by Europe continuing to buy Russian oil, prolonging the war in Ukraine, the damage done by what President Trump calls a scam and a hoax, so-called climate change. And he also talked about the wars that he has stopped. Now, one analysis says, well, they haven't exactly stopped them. He's gotten them to negotiate. Either way, it's a significant achievement. And Donald Trump enumerated this, number 37.
I ended 7 wars, dealt with the leaders of each and every one of these countries, and never even received a phone call from the United Nations offering to help in finalizing the deal. All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle. If the First Lady wasn't in great shape, she would have fallen, but she's in great shape. We're both in good shape. We both stood. And then a teleprompter that didn't work. These are the 2 things I got from the United Nations, a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter. Thank you very much.
And you heard the laughter. Keep in mind, all these lines have to be translated into the language so the listener understands it, and they're still laughing. You can just sense in the room the respect for this man. They were at rapt attention. And he called him out. Your countries are being ruined by people that don't accept your values, don't accept your culture, trying to change your culture and your values once they get there. Unbridled immigration is changing your countries. You're being fools. You're being duped. Do something about it. He really went on a rant about climate change. At one time it was called global cooling, he said. Then, because the planet got warmer, they called it global warming. Then the planet didn't get any warmer, so then they called it climate change, so it's heads I win, tails you lose. And talked about how expensive it is and how Western European countries, particularly the United States, have reduced their so-called carbon footprint. He went on a rant about that term too. Meanwhile, China has been the biggest culprit in this whole climate change scam, he says. China doesn't have windmills, but they're building your windmills.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.